Hi, good morning. My name is Kyle Ring, Operations Specialist at ArtsQuest. Thank you all for coming in to join us for our annual Veterans Day panel discussion. And thank you to Embassy Bank and Phoebe Ministries for partnering with us so that we can keep doing this every year. It's a very important, very intimate discussion where we learn some kind of in-depth information that you wouldn't normally get without talking straight to the veterans. So it's kind of like our great way to introduce you to these people. With that, I want to introduce our Master of Ceremonies, Colonel Frank Gunter. He's been helping us for a long time, and this has been a great partner to work with on hosting this. So, Frank.
Thank you, Kyle. If you could please stand for the national anthem, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I'm Colonel Frank Gunter, active in reserve 35 years. Started at Parris Island and ended up with my last tour was in Iraq for 13 months. Right next to me, we have Chief Warrant Officer 4, Cheryl G. Ites, also U.S. Marines, retired. During her 35-year career, served 3 tours in Iraq, including during the first and second battles of Fallujah. CWO4 Ites' primary role was the officer in charge of mortuary affairs, responsible for the battlefield recovery, respectful processing, and transport of U.S. allied forces and local national combat fatalities. Her unit's work is the subject of an exhibit at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. CWO4 Ites was awarded the Bronze Star Medal and retired in 2009. At the other end of the stage, I have Master Chief Petty Officer, that's an E9 rank, Nathaniel Smith, U.S. Navy retired. During his 24-year Navy career, Master Chief Smith served on 6 different classes of ships, 5 being combatants, including the aircraft carrier USS Coral Sea. His ships supported U.S. operations in the Mediterranean Sea during actions against Gaddafi in Libya and Saddam in Iraq. On shore duty, Master Chief Smith served as the senior instructor where he supervised the training of about 400 young men and women to be Navy machinist mates. Master Chief Smith was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal and retired in 1999. First of all, just to keep the title short, if it's okay, Chief and Gunner?
It's fine.
Okay. Thomas Paine, during the American Revolution 250 years ago, wrote about the difference between the summer soldier who came in for only a season, then got bored and left, just about the time they learned enough to be useful, and the need for the winter soldier, someone who is willing to stay in the service so as they increase their knowledge, increase their skill, provide the training for the younger men and women who have joined the service. So it is an honor here to have 2 winter soldiers who both of them made extensive careers in the service. Okay, my first question, and I'll start with you, Gunner. Why did you enlist?
So I enlisted in 1974. The Vietnam War was still going on. And I don't know if I should say this, but I was in a bar and I was talking to young males, and at the time, a lot of them
Are
were
you sure we should hear the story?
a lot of them were discussing whether or not they were going to flee to Canada, and I made a great speech to them about the importance of being a citizen and serving in the military in a time of conflict, regardless of personal sacrifice. And they turned to me and said, "Easy for you to say, you're a woman, you can't get drafted." So I went down and signed up the next day because they were right.
Wow. Chief, why did you enlist?
I enlisted because the fact is my father was a Marine in Iwo Jima, 3 brothers in the Army. Needless to say, my one brother was killed in Vietnam.
Mhm.
So it was my time to stand up, take the oath. Um, Specifically, it was between the Air Force and the Navy. And my brother-in-law, who was in the Navy, he showed me his cruise book where he was in Italy, France, Spain, and seen the world. So I said, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. But I really enjoyed it.
Your relative who was killed in Vietnam, was he in the Army, the Navy?
Yes, he was in the 1st Infantry Division, 2nd Armored Division, Vietnam.
You also had relatives, did I understand correctly, in the service?
I had one brother who went to Vietnam, um, came back.
Chief, what was your most interesting assignment out of the decades plus that you spent in the service?
Well, the most interesting assignment was Service School Command Great Lakes,
Mhm.
where I actually had male and females that I dealt with.
And what made that interesting?
What made it interesting is when you put a male and female together, usually have problems.
Okay.
Okay, so but the thing is that it wasn't so much when they were in school is when they were back at the barracks.
Okay. Gunner, what was your most interesting assignment of your career?
I think being the mortuary affairs officer in Iraq and setting up that capability for the Marine Corps.
Could you describe what you did?
So I was one of the people that set up that capability for us to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. And we started it in Iraq. And at that time, it was an ad hoc unit. There wasn't a formal unit within the Marine Corps that had that mission assignment. But however, it was needed in every war. You have fatalities as well as other types of casualties. So we needed to have processes and procedures in place. The Army has a good capability, and people thought, oh, that was an Army responsibility. But in the Marine Corps area of operation, they were not responsible. We were, and so we set up what are called mortuary affairs collection points, where we could prepare the remains for shipment back to the theater mortuary evacuation point. And then from there, they came back to the States to Dover Air Force Base for final processing and return to the families. Unlike the Army, we decided that the Marine Corps is a small capability. They're faster moving. They continue to move forward. So we did battlefield recoveries. So we would go out with a quick reaction force to the area of the incident, wherever that fatality occurred, recover those remains, and bring them back to our area for processing. So that's how we differ from the other services.
So it wasn't a matter that you were at headquarters and the
No.
units transported. You
No.
were in the front line.
We would go into the area sometimes during combat operations, still going on, to recover remains and bring them back.
Chief, of your career, what was the most difficult assignment that you had?
Most difficult assignment was when I went on the USS Coral Sea.
Mhm.
I brought her back from the West Coast via World Cruise. Then we went into the shipyard for major overhaul. So specifically, we worked 7 days a week, 12-hour days, trying to get the ship ready to be prepared to go back to sea and deployment.
Seven
7 days.
7 days a week, 12 hours a day?
Yes, sir.
Chief, you need a stronger union. That seems to be, that's a lot of hours,
Yes.
a lot of time. When the ship is in port like that, are the sailors there, or the sailors moving to barracks?
So everybody moves off the ship.
Okay.
However, the engineers are the first ones on the ship and the last ones to leave.
And that was your,
That was us.
Gunner, most difficult assignment? Or did you already answer that
I
question?
might have already answered that question. Oddly enough, I think it's similar, except for during the Second Battle of Fallujah, we were responsible for collecting up enemy dead, and for my Marines, I think that was harder than recovering our own, because when you're recovering your own, it's kind of a labor of love. You want to make sure they're brought back and their families have closure. When you're recovering enemy dead and I required them to show them the same level of care and respect. That was a little bit harder for Marines, and knowing myself that I was putting myself and my Marines in harm's way to do that made it a little bit tougher.
Oh, that's, I don't think I'd be capable of that, so. Take a different approach. What's the funniest thing? What's the most humorous thing that happened in your career?
Funniest thing is, it's called crossing the equator, where you initiated shellback. So
What was involved?
what was involved was actually, we were called polywogs,
Mm-hmm.
and you start from the morning, and you go through the whole ship. You crawl on your hands and knees, and you're basically down to your skivvies, okay? And the shellbacks would actually have cut off fire hoses, and they would whip you as you're going through. And then you go specifically through a garbage chute, which they save the garbage for over a week. And you crawl through that, and then you have to take it's an olive, black olive,
Mm-hmm.
from King Neptune's belly button, and basically take it and out of his belly button. So
And King Neptune was another sailor.
yes, that's correct.
Okay.
He was a big guy. So
So one would only do this once in a career?
well, every time you cross the equator, the only thing was I was on the opposite side then. I get an
Okay.
opportunity. So.
Well, Gunner, most humorous or funniest thing that happened in your career?
Okay, so the funniest thing was we do an event each year called Toys for Tots, which we collect up new toys to give to deserving families and children who wouldn't otherwise have as nice of a Christmas. And to do that, you have to go out to different organizations and events in your uniform and present them at the end of the evening event with a thank you for their donation and collect up all the toys and thank them for participating. And one year, I was told to take 4 junior female Marines to an event that had to do with male dancers. And we could not be seen.
Generous donors?
Yeah, generous donors. It was a very big event. We collected many toys. And the women could not be seen with the male dancers
Mm-hmm.
and in uniform. So that was the funniest thing that ever happened to me, was going there for
When
that
you
event.
enlisted, you never thought you'd be
No, ordered to go
ordered
to see male
male
dancers.
dancers.
No,
Okay.
never thought that would happen.
Gunner, What opportunities did you get in the service? What advantages do you think that the service provided?
I think for women, it's interesting. I joined the Marine Corps for a very specific reason, and that is that of the branches, um, when I was in seventh grade, I did a term paper, oddly enough, on the branches of the military service, and I interviewed men and women from each branch, and of those, the Marine Corps individuals impressed me the most, especially the women, with how they felt that women were treated once you at appropriately for your rank and with no regard to whether you were female or male. And that was what I wanted. And so I think that the advantages for women are if you join the service, you're given more responsibility at a younger age. You have very good mentors and trainers all the way through. And so you can come in the Marine Corps or the military, knowing nothing about military life, and you will be taught every step of the way what's required for the next promotion or next advancement and your skill. And you're given opportunities not only within that occupational specialty, but skills that can be used across many events or careers throughout your lifetime. And in addition to that, if you find one that you like better later on, you can do what's called a lateral move to a different occupational specialty, and then they will train you in that.
What do you mean by occupational specialty?
So I could come in as a electrician and go out as intelligence or military police or any other occupation that I want within the military. And they will train me to that standard, but I think the most valuable thing that you learn in the military is attention to detail, teamwork, and the ability to lead. And in the Marine Corps, if you're a lance corporal, you're required to lead that private below you. So you're given opportunities to grow in your leadership skills.
Chief, the same question. What opportunities or advantages did you see from military service?
Well, the opportunities is specifically as they say, you know, the sky is the limit. Okay, you start out as you can be enlisted, and you can have the opportunity to be an officer. Okay, so in the Navy, you would have to wait till you're a first class petty officer to strike to be a limited duty officer, or a chief petty officer to go for warrant officer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the opportunity that came in the late '80s was Seaman Admiral program. So you can be a third class petty officer, and if you're, if you're doing outstanding, they would allow you to apply for that. And if you actually was accepted, they would send you to college for 4 years. You would be a commissioned officer when you're finished, and that was basically promoted by a former. He was he was the commander. He was a naval officer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he retired 4-star. He was a first class personnelman and went all the way to a 4-star admiral.
So he started with an E1.
Yep.
And at his end of his career, 09, 010?
09, that's right.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And in the Navy, it's not that easy to make rank either.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for instance, I don't want to put myself above anybody, but E9s in the Navy is 1.25%
Mhm.
that ever make it.
You know, you surprised me with your answer because with the career Navy people I've talked to, when I talk about advantages or opportunities, the first thing they talk about is all the countries they visited.
Yes.
Which countries did you get a chance to?
Well, I've been to numerous countries. I've been to Mediterranean several times.
Mhm.
I've been to, needless to say, the Persian Gulf uh, 3 times. I've been to South America. I've been to Northern Europe, places that I couldn't afford to even dream about going.
Mhm.
Okay, I actually had that advantage to see those countries.
So Liberty in Rome or Naples?
Oh yeah, well, well, Naples was one of the ones that I don't think too many people wanted to go to.
Ah.
But
Been there, and I
Spain,
understand that.
Portugal, France.
Mhm.
Okay.
And you did Liberty in South America as well?
Oh, absolutely. We would. It was called a Unitas,
Mhm.
and we would actually operate with with Brazil, uh, Argentina, stuff like
Mhm.
that.
Besides Iraq, where did you have the opportunity to go with the
With the Marine
Marines?
Corps, went to Senegal, went to Nigeria, went to Moldova, went to Serbia, went to Germany, went to um, quite a few places
Not
actually.
Afghanistan.
Oh, I went to Afghanistan and I went to Iraq, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But Afghanistan was not a Liberty port? Was
not a Liberty
No.
port, no.
So at this point, I'd like to know if there's any questions from either the distance audience or the people in the room. And looking carefully, I hear no questions. Okay. Is that me? Chief, how's the Navy changed over your career?
Well, it's funny.
I'm sorry, you enlisted when? What year?
I enlisted in 1975.
So 50 years ago.
50 years ago, it made a few changes.
Mhm.
Okay. So, for instance, when I first went in under Admiral Zumwalt, okay, he was the chief of naval operations,
Mhm.
and he changed the uniform I, from being Cracker Jacks to a double-breasted uniform, such as I have on now. The only difference was that we have silver buttons instead of gold buttons. To me,
Mhm.
that was a turnoff.
Mhm.
So I wore that uniform, needless to say, for 6 years. And then we went back to the Cracker Jacks, and that's what the Navy was all about. Uh, and specifically, Navy is the only branch that separates its ranks from E6 to E7. So E1 to E6,
Mhm.
we have Cracker Jacks, E7 through E9. Officers and chiefs wear the same uniform.
Mhm.
So, and now I saw another change where they have a khaki shirt and it's supposed to be blue pants. It's called working blues. So it's amazing how things change.
As far as in addition to the uniform, the number of women in the Navy has increased.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's a good thing, okay? Because as far as I'm concerned, they should have equal rights,
Mhm.
okay? For many years, they haven't been. And specifically, I never served with a female on board ships because combatant ships, they didn't put females on board,
Mhm.
okay? But as an opportunity to serve with them as a company commander, once they were trained, they were one of the best. They were, as far as I'm concerned, I had males and females company commander. My females were much better than the males. So,
Do do women command ships now?
yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes, they do.
Uh, sh- uh, Gunner, as far as the Marine Corps over your career, which is almost 50 years as well, 50 years from the time that you enlisted until now, how has it changed? And I guess I have a follow-up to your previous answer. Um, were you speaking of the reality that that women were treated as equal, or were you talking about an ideal that women were treated as equal at the beginning of your career?
I think that for the most part, I was treated the same as every male.
Mhm.
So when I was in charge as a corporal or as a sergeant, my duties and responsibilities were the same as my male counterparts. My, my Marines followed my orders the same way they would have as a male. When I was given an order, I was treated the same. I will say that um, it has improved, however. Um, can I tell a funny story?
Certainly, yes.
So when I joined the Marine Corps, it was one woman for about every 200 males in the Marine Corps. My first military occupational specialty, my first job, was as military police. I was one of the first women in the Marine Corps uh, to serve in that capacity as military police. So when I went through basic training, I went through MP school. Um, there were two women in the MP school with myself and one reservist, Marine, female, and that was it. And we did well, and I graduated number one in my class. They said if you graduate number one in your class, you get to pick your duty assignment. So that was great news. So went to pick the duty assignment, and they asked who's number one. I raised my hand, and they said who's number two, and I said what happened to number one? You've been assigned a place, you don't get to pick. So that was true. And then I went to my
It's
first unfair, but that's life is not always fair. But went to my first duty station, met the provost marshal. He was very, very good, just welcomed me to the unit. Went to uh, the provost sergeant, who was an E9, and he said, the Marine Corps has done some asinine things in its day. Most asinine thing they've ever done is put a woman in my MP field. I'm going to do everything I can to get you out of my field, if not out of my corps. Welcome aboard. And I went, okay, if I don't do the job, you're absolutely right. If I do, I hope you're man enough to admit you made an error. 3 months later, he put me in for meritorious promotion. So he's pinning on my rank, and I said, so is this an apology? And he said, as close as you're ever going to get. And a month later, we had another woman come in. She lasted 2 weeks and was kicked out. And he said, so imagine how life would have been different for you if she had been the first one and not you. And he said, and imagine how life would be for other women coming in and how much harder it would be if you hadn't been here before them. So I think the moral of that story is you have to come in, and instead of wanting to be treated as a woman, you have to go into the military knowing that you're going to be treated as a service member, and take your sex out of it, because it's not important to doing your job. So go in with that mindset, and I think you'll do really well. And so I think so. I always was treated, I think, as though I was a Marine and not as a woman. I think if you are brought in and you want to be treated a way, you're going to be treated that way, but you're going to lose out on opportunities. You come in expecting to be treated as a female. So no Marine ever carried my bags. No Marine ever lifted my sea bag for me. None of that, because they wouldn't do it for somebody else unless they were injured. So if I was injured, somebody would do it. But if I wasn't injured, nobody would.
The two of you have something in common that I didn't realize until I read your bios. You, as part of was the mortuary affairs, commanded a unit which was mostly, if not all, men.
Correct. I
And
only
you
have 3 women.
had the opportunity at the school to command, what was it, 150 women?
Yes.
Yes. Um, you talked about how the women in many ways were better Navy than the men, but what were the challenges involved or were there any challenges in commanding a unit that was almost entirely women?
Well, the biggest challenge I had is right after tailhook, and I don't know if you're familiar with tailhook.
Yes, I think I am, but if you could describe it
Okay, well,
quickly.
specifically what it was naval aviators that had females, and specifically, uh, they actually initiate them, and it got to the point that they actually abused them. Okay, so now I'm going into a all female company as a male. So it was a challenge because of the fact is there was a lot of chiefs. I was a chief at the time. Would not take a female company because they felt that you know that they would get in trouble.
Hmm.
But the thing was that I looked at again, I looked at females as female sailors, not a female. I treated them equal. And the thing was that once I got adjusted, because there's certain things that females' needs are different than males.
Hmm.
Okay, so that was a learning curve for me. But once I got past that, we had outstanding companies, really did.
But the point you made about tailhook, there was the media jumped all over it, and
Oh,
there was a lot of attention trying to find whether there were other cases of something similar happening in the service.
yes,
So it was pretty bold of you to take it because the other chiefs were heading for the door rather
that's
than,
for sure.
yeah.
So I specifically, and I'll be very honest with you, right after I finished that command, I put a star above my anchor.
Ah,
So,
so it must have been a successful tour.
well, absolutely.
Very successful tour.
Actually, it's called the C&O billet.
Right.
So, Chief of
Excellent.
Naval Operations.
So you in Iraq commanded a unit that was mostly men or all men?
Mostly men. I had about 3 to 5 women, depending on which tour.
And how many men?
140 at the height and 68 at the was the smallest number.
What were there challenges, or was it?
I people thought that I would have problems bringing diverse units together because the first unit I had was um, parts of 4 companies came over to do the mortuary affairs mission, and I had males of all rank. And oddly enough, I was in charge of them, even though as a warrant officer, because I was the subject matter expert, and it was an ad hoc unit. So I had a major in charge of one company. I had, a captain in charge of another company, that type of thing, and they were male. And yet they had to take direction and orders from me because I was in charge of the overall mission. Um, but once you sat down with them, explained what was going on, um, they they were very good, and I didn't have any problems handling my company at all. They followed my orders. They performed the duties that they were assigned to do.
People who are Marines who were assigned to mortuary affairs, are they volunteers or was it just a unit and you were told you're now mortuary affairs?
So it varied. We tried to. I went around to the different units and asked them to uh, come over and be a part of this
Hmm.
event, and so the units were volunteered because they could tell me that they wanted to be a part or not a part. However, individuals within the units, many of them were voluntold, as we would say. So it was a mix between those people who wanted to come, those people who would have preferred to do something else, but this was the
They
mission
were
they
told
were
they were going
assigned.
to volunteer. Yeah.
Yes.
How did your military service affect you after retirement? Did
Well,
it have any effect? Yes, go ahead.
yes.
Please.
So I was a boiler technician in the Navy.
Mhm.
So as a Master Chief Boiler Technician, when I retired, I got a job with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as a state boiler inspector.
Mhm.
And then it gave me the opportunity to move up to be the chief boiler inspector for the state of Pennsylvania.
And that would be, you'd be working in Harrisburg then?
Yes, 20 years with the state.
Gunner, I don't know if your military experience provided many civilian job opportunities afterwards?
Uh, back at one point, I was military police when I initially joined.
Mhm.
So in 1979, I had an opportunity to go work with DEA if I wanted to. I did not, um, but I could have. But when I got off active duty in 2009, I wound up going to work at the Pentagon, and they created a position mainly because of what I had done in Iraq and Afghanistan and that capability. So they created a position for me within military community and family policy, writing DoD policy on casualty and mortuary affairs.
The Pentagon, isn't that the place where ambition goes to die? Where
It was a very good job.
it was a good job.
Yes. And it gave me other opportunities because of that. I was able to work with FEMA and HHS, and was able to work with medical examiners and coroners and morticians around the world. So it was interesting, and funeral directors.
Before I continue, are there any questions either from those present or any people at a distance? Yes, sir, please.
Certainly.
Okay, if I could repeat the question. So the question was, you had mentioned earlier that you were responsible, your team was responsible for not only the respectful processing of American and Allied dead, but also of enemy dead as well. And your question concerned, what was the process for that? Okay.
Okay. So it was the first time that we had ever done that as a military service, at least at that scale. And so when we had the people who died initially, we had processes that I put in place for enemy losses or civilian casualties that were Iraqi civilian casualties, because we had them both ways. So in small scale, they would go to a hospital or a medical treatment facility and may die in that medical treatment facility. And then what do you do with them? How do you get them back to their families or their communities to be taken care of by them when we're at war with these people? We're in conflict. And so what we did was we kept them for about 3 days before we would inter them. And it was a temporary interment, but we knew where they were located. And then we put the word out through the police officers in the community or the local imams that we had somebody who
Imam
came
was
in.
a religious leader?
Religious leader, who the chieftains in the local communities. We could work with them through civil affairs to get some word out. And then we had photographs and information on those enemy dead, and my information was sent out and where I was located. And we actually had families or police or local chieftains come and claim those remains from us. So I created a form that was written both in English and Arabic on the other side. And I had a translator go with me to the gate. They would come to the gate, they would ask for a remain. They usually just had my name on a piece of paper. And I would go and meet them at the gate, talk to them, and they would provide me with information about the person they were looking for. I actually had a book. They would find them. I knew where they were. I would then arrange for them to be returned to them. They would come back at that designated time, receive those remains. Large scale, it was such as the Second Battle of Fallujah. The reason we did it was because the enemy were not taking care of their own. They were pressing the fight. They were in a more distressed situation. And so they were left in buildings and in the streets. And it became a health concern as well as a humanitarian concern.
You're talking about the enemy dead were left in the street.
Left in the street, right, and were not being recovered. And so we would go into the street and into the buildings and recover their dead. We brought them back to a place that was actually the potato factory, because the potato factory was an area that had large refrigeration units to keep all the potato seed for the entire country. And we moved all the potato seed into one of those areas, locked it up, and maintained that for them. But that left us 3 of these large bays to process enemy dead and keep them refrigerated until we could arrange for the return of them to local control. And it turned out that I worked through the Ministry of Health for Iraq, the Ministry of Transportation, the local religious leaders, and their land command as well, to determine what the best process was for the Iraqi government and people to handle those remains. And in the end, what we wound up doing was recovering the remains, bringing them back, processing them to try to ID them. Some of them had IDs on them. They had some kind of document or paper on them that told you who they were. Others did not. But we photographed them, fingerprinted them. That fingerprinting didn't turn out to be very useful because the Iraqi people didn't have many fingerprints of their people. But the photographs turned out to be useful. The pocket litter was, and the area and location of their death turned out to be important to the Iraqi government to be able to contact the families and be able to provide them with a death certificate at the end. We wound up providing a certificate of death, the information on the individuals. We provided that both in paper form and digitally to the Iraqi government to be able to utilize in accommodating those families. For us, at the end, they asked us to, we offered to either return them to them or to bury them according to international standards, which the Iraqi government, the Iraqis like to be buried underground, but they're kind of put on a ledge and on their right side facing Mecca, right? We wound up burying them without the ledge, but we put them on their side facing Mecca. So all the rows that they were placed in, and they were separated. International standard is 10 bodies in a 70-foot trench that's 4 feet deep. We made it 100 foot after speaking with local imams. That was the adjustment that we made to them, and then facing Mecca and being placed on their side. So then we buried them in that fashion, did a beautification of that cemetery, marked where everybody was located, and they came out and blessed the ground beforehand. They blessed the ground afterwards. And then we returned all that information to the Iraqi government and to the local and to the local imams to be able to be utilized. Does that answer your question?
That was a very interesting question. Did you have a follow-up? No. Is there another question here? I'd like to do a follow-up to that as well. So you spoke about the religious requirements, but you used an expression pocket litter. What is pocket litter?
So anything that's on a person that might identify them.
Okay. So you're not looking for litter. You're looking
No, wallets, photographs, any document that says who you might be or where you might be from, anything that might help identify you. So we used that, took photographs of that so that the family would be able to say, oh, that's the picture of our family, so that's him.
You know, the very, very interesting question. To continue on that theme, Chief, the Navy still, if a sailor dies while on cruise, it's still the tradition that they're buried at sea?
I understand they stopped that now.
They stopped that, so they
Yes.
take them home now.
Yes.
So
When did that change occur? When?
The way I understand it, I guess it changed after Iraqi freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because before we would actually take bodies out and we performed ceremonies
Mm-hmm.
and they would go overboard.
they still can, according
Oh, yep.
to DOD law, regulation. They still can do burial at sea. The medical examiner, the Armed Forces medical examiner, doesn't want them to do that for any normal cruise. There's now mechanisms and procedures in place to return sailors back to the United States to the Armed Forces medical examiner at Dover Air Force Base for final determination and return back to the family. However, they can do it when the need arises. If you're in combat operations and those chains break down, they're still authorized to do it. They have procedures in place of what to collect and what to perform.
Well then, Chief, I think I'm aiming this at you. The Arizona sank at Pearl Harbor
Yes.
With the Japanese attack. Do I understand correctly that sailors who were on the Arizona that day that died last year can choose to be buried inside the Arizona?
Yes, absolutely.
So divers go down and
Yes.
Yes. And weld them in.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
that's an incredible honor. My next question. Chief, would you recommend military service to a young person today, 2025? Why or why not?
Absolutely.
Why?
Why? Because of the fact is, you still have the same opportunity, more so today than you did before, to basically to advance, okay, to get in different programs such as officers, candidate school, and stuff like that. And the pay is much better today than it was
50 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you see a lot of young people going in to get the college benefits, the GI Bill?
I see a lot of going in not knowing where they're going, needless to say. But if I have the opportunity, I talk to young men and women that really don't have a set goal as far as college or can't afford to go to college. It's a great opportunity for them at least to go in there, get educated, okay? In other words, for them to get a job here is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
In the military, you have an opportunity to do things that you couldn't do on the outside,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And I also tell them, think about what you want to do after you leave the service. because once you get in there and you get into a field that you can utilize on the outside, it's much easier to get a job when you get out.
Gunner, what would you advise a young person considering military service? Would you advise them to consider it or not to?
No, I would tell young people who want to uh, learn leadership skills, have direction, have focus in their life that they might not otherwise have, that the military is a good career path. And like you said, you can start out as an enlisted, you can get your education through the military, you can then decide whether you want to be a warrant officer or a regular officer or stay enlisted and become a senior enlisted. Uh, all of them have their advantages. Each branch of service has different skill sets or um, levels of physical training or culture. And so do some homework and decide which branch of service more closely aligns with your life goals and the way you want to live. You know, the Air Force is more technical in some regards than other branches of the service, and not quite as strenuous on the physical aspect. The Marine Corps is much harder on physical appearance and 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 that type of thing. So each branch has customs, traditions that you're going to look at and find out which ones are closely aligned to you, and then what job you want to have in the service. But whether you're in for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, or a career, you're going to learn something that is going to be useful in your outside endeavors at some point. And if nothing else, if you're young and you don't have a real strong focus, it will give you that in the end, and you will be more disciplined, make better choices, life choices after you've served.
I'm embarrassed with the two of you because you both had very good reasons for enlisting and making a career of it. I went down to the recruiting station in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the Marine recruiter wasn't in his office. So I talked to the Navy, talked to the Air Force, talked to the Army, had all these brochures, and the Marine recruiter came in, and I stuck my head in his door, and he took one look at me, and he said, stick with the other services. You'll never make a Marine. That made me so angry. All night long, I was angry. Got up the next morning, went down and enlisted. So he saw me coming a mile away. Okay, we have time for one more question. Yes, we have a question in the back there. It can pass the microphone, or no? There was no question. Yes, we have a question here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, looking back at your well-accomplished careers in hindsight, is there anything that you would have done or gone about differently, either mission specifically or generally speaking?
Good question. Chief,
Yes.
do you want to start?
Yeah, first of all, and my wife won't like this. However,
Debbie, are you listening?
yeah, the thing is that the only thing that I would have done different is I would have took the advantage of being an officer. Because the thing is that, such as I had put in a package for a warrant officer, but my children were getting older, and they were giving mom hard times. Uh, it's really tough on a family when you're in the military, and when you're like the Navy, whether you're in your combat or you're in peacetime, you're gone 6 to 8 months. Every 18 months, you're away. So that is really hard on a family. Matter of fact, needless to say, about 80% are divorces. Okay,
80.
that's correct.
Wow.
So the thing is that I would have took the opportunity to be an officer, because the fact is you get more opportunity as an officer than you have as enlisted. All right. And The thing is that I wouldn't have jumped into marriages at a young age because of the fact is my wife raised 4 children by herself. Okay? But that's the only thing I would change.
Gunner, same question?
Same question. I think I probably would have requested transfers, oddly enough, more frequently, um, just to get out of what I became comfortable with, just to challenge myself a little bit more by having a different opportunity, a different career. And I might have gone officer at some point instead of just warrant officer. So I might have done enlisted warrant, and then at some point switched over to become an officer after I got my master's. I probably would have done that.
Very, very good question. I see we're down to the last couple minutes. I'd like to end where I started. The military requires young men and young women to do their honorable 3 years and then get on with the rest of their life. But for it to be successful, it requires people who are willing to make active and reserve, make a career of it, to provide the knowledge and the skill to make to accomplish the mission, to make the military career a success. Any last thoughts? Great. Oh, please.
The thing is that, once again, I would strongly recommend young men and women that doesn't have a clear path out of high school to think about the military.
And I would say that one thing neither one of us mentioned, and it's probably the most important thing, is that when you join the military and you are a part of that, you're a part of something larger than yourself, and you develop friendships and associations that last a lifetime. The last time I served on active duty in Iraq or Afghanistan was back in the early 2000s, 2004. Was my last time in Iraq, and my Marines, my young Marines, who were 19, 20 years old, still are in touch with me today. I received emails from them, wishing me happy birthday for the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps. I get invited to their weddings, to their children's birthday parties. I mean, you develop friendships, true friendships in the military, like you would never do in a regular civilian position. So you get a big extended family, and I think that's an important aspect of the life. And your families develop those friendships as well. When they're waiting for you to come home, there's some other family that's there with them, and they become close to them as well. So I think that's important.
Well, Master Chief Petty Officer Smith, CWO4 Ites, both of you, considering you're at your 250th anniversary, look pretty good.
I think we do, don't we?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.